In a world constantly buzzing with notifications, messages, deadlines, and the unspoken pressure to always be on, the idea of stepping back, of choosing to not be available, feels radical. Yet, this very act, the withdrawal of constant accessibility, may be one of the most transformative decisions a person can make. The quote often attributed to Carl Jung, "When you stop being available, everything changes," captures something quietly revolutionary. Whether or not these words came directly from Jung, they embody a truth deeply rooted in his psychological philosophy, that transformation often begins with introspective detachment. Jung spent his life studying the unconscious, the shadow, the self, and the mysterious process of individuation, the journey toward becoming whole. Within this process lies a paradox. To truly connect with oneself, one must first disconnect from the noise. This essay will explore how Jungian principles illuminate the psychological and existential power of stepping away, of no longer being available, and how through this act, everything indeed begins to change. Availability and the illusion of connection. To be unavailable today often means more than just physical presence. It's an emotional and psychological openness, a willingness to constantly respond, serve, validate, and be seen. It's answering texts immediately, saying yes to every invitation, absorbing others' emotional baggage, and rarely questioning whether those demands align with one's true self. Jung would likely see this kind of hyper-availability as a symptom of the ego's dependence on external affirmation. Rather than listening to the inner voice, the self, as Jung would call it, many people unconsciously tune into the collective expectations of society. They become, in a sense, actors on a stage, performing roles they never consciously chose. Over time, this disconnect leads to anxiety, resentment, fatigue, and even depression. But when you stop being available, when you consciously pause, withdraw, and redirect your energy, you disrupt this performance. You stop giving the world unlimited access to your emotional energy. In doing so, you initiate a quiet but powerful inner rebellion, and everything begins to shift. Boundaries in the journey of individuation. Jung's concept of individuation is central here. It's the lifelong process of becoming who you truly are, not the persona you present to the world, but the unified self that integrates the conscious and unconscious mind. Boundaries are essential in this journey. Setting boundaries is not about arrogance or selfishness. It's about clarity. It's about knowing where you end and others begin. When you say no, you're not just rejecting a request. You're affirming your sovereignty. You're acknowledging your finite emotional resources and choosing to invest them with intention. This act often stirs resistance. People may feel abandoned, confused, or even angry. But this discomfort is necessary. It reveals the fragile foundations of certain relationships, the ones based on convenience or emotional dependence. As these fall away, what remains is more authentic, more reciprocal, more grounded in mutual respect. Jung warned that individuation could not occur without conflict, inner conflict, and often outer conflict. The choice to withdraw from being endlessly available is one such battleground. It's not easy, it requires courage, but it's the price of wholeness, psychic energy, and the economics of the soul. Jung saw libido as a broad term, not just sexual energy, but all psychic energy. This energy fuels our creativity, relationships, dreams, and inner growth. But like any resource, it's limited. If we scatter it across every obligation, message, and demand, we deplete ourselves. We run on empty. We become anxious, disoriented, numb. When you stop being available, you stop leaking energy. You begin to gather it inward. This redirection, this conservation of energy, is what leads to transformation. It fuels the dream life, the imagination, the quiet insights that come only when the noise fades. It nurtures what Jung called the self, the archetype of wholeness. And in this inward turning, you begin to hear the subtle voice of your true nature. You begin to remember who you are beneath the masks and duties, what you love, what hurts, what matters. This is the beginning of awakening, social recalibration, and the uncomfortable truth. When you stop being available, you begin to see people for who they really are, and they begin to see you differently too. Some may distance themselves. Some may accuse you of being cold, selfish, or changed. But Jung would argue that this resistance is natural. People project their needs and expectations onto us. When we change the script, we threaten their comfort. Yet, this is necessary. Jung spoke of the shadow, the unconscious parts of ourselves that we hide or deny. People often project their own unmet needs onto those who are constantly available. By stepping away, we force them to face their own discomfort, and we face ours. Not everyone will understand, but those who remain, those who respect your boundaries, who meet you where you are, who don't demand constant access, they are the ones worth keeping. These relationships, forged in the fire of individuation, are deeper and more truthful. Transformation in solitude. Solitude, not loneliness but chosen aloneness, is sacred in Jungian psychology. Jung himself withdrew from society for long periods, most famously building a tower in Jungian where he could write, paint, and reflect. In solitude he found his deepest truths. Likewise, when we stop being available, we enter a similar sacred space. It may be unfamiliar at first, even painful, but over time it becomes fertile ground. New ideas emerge, old wounds begin to heal, creativity flourishes, and from this silence a new voice arises, your own. You stop living reactively, you stop playing roles, you begin to live with intention. And that is a profound shift, a reorientation of the soul itself. Conclusion. The boldness to transform. When you no longer are available, everything changes is more than a motivational cliché. It's a deep psychological reality based on the teachings of Carl Jung. The act of boundary drawing and backing away from other people's demands reconnects us to our inner reality. It might disrupt our relations and create resistance, but it eventually leads to clarity, to strengthening, and deeper meaning. Jung taught that the journey of individuation calls for boldness, the boldness of being misunderstood, of being alone, and of being changed. When we no longer are available to the world, we become available to ourselves, and that changes everything. This is the journey Jung invites us on, not an easy path, but a necessary one. When we dare to step away, to stop being endlessly available, we reclaim the most precious resource of all, our presence. And in that space, we begin to transform.